Hello, good afternoon, early morning, everyone. At least coming here from the East Coast, it's 11 a.m. Thank you very much for joining me today. Looking forward to chatting about some package design in the craft beer industry. Title of my presentation today is Creating Highly Effective Package Design for the Craft Beer Market with Green Duck Studio. That's who I am, Dave Smith, the owner there. I'll get into a little bit. And so wanted to just welcome you all. And I'm going to give people a couple more seconds here to join, and then we'll jump right in. All righty. So first off, wanted to just set the agenda for today so everybody knows what to expect. I'll do a brief introduction about myself and what I do. Then we'll talk about some goals and objectives, excuse me. And then we'll jump into the 4 steps of creating effective package design. So you can read the bullets there. We'll delve deep into that. And then there is a little bit of time at the end for a Q&A session. But also feel free to drop comments if you have any questions throughout. I can stop and answer them. And we'll get going. So I'm going to jump right in and just sort of talk about myself. So real quick, my name is Dave Smith. I'm the founder of Green Duck Studio. We're located in Dover, New Hampshire. That's just outside Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So a little town there. And so essentially I run a boutique branding, design, and marketing agency. And we work a lot in the food and beverage space with a focus on the craft beer industry. So that's a bit of an overview about Green Duck Studio, but I kind of wanted to basically put out there, why would you believe me, right? Like I'm giving this presentation today. Hopefully, you're all here and you're ready to learn some good stuff. But just a little bit about me personally. I've spent decades working with large consumer retail brands. So Sprouts, which is a West Coast supermarket, Dean Foods, Hood, there's sort of some large dairy industry players, Scott's Miracle Gro and Home Depot. So working with some large retailers throughout most of my career. And so about a few years ago, I got really into the craft beer focus. And so I have experience in both the external and interior capacities. So I'm the former director of marketing at Stoneface Brewing, which is a brewery about 10,000 barrels here in Newington, New Hampshire. So again, just outside Portsmouth. I was also the VP of marketing and creative at Riverwalk Brewing down in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And I've also been working as outsourced creative and marketing for several other craft breweries in the New England area. So maybe my best qualifications that I'm bald with a beard. I primarily dress in flannel and brewery t-shirts, so both of which I'm wearing right now. But really, all jokes aside, at the end of the day, I'm passionate about this industry. I want to see it shine. I've been to several CBC conferences, and I just love this industry. And so hopefully today we can learn a bit about, what makes effective packaging design, which is for a lot of breweries, that's at the forefront of what they're doing. And so I wanted to jump into, why is packaging design important, right? The power of influence that packaging has on us as people in general is huge. And so kind of wanted to start there with why is that? Why are we here today? What's the importance of it all? So as a whole, the food and beverage industry is about $150 billion a year industry, right? So a lot of money gets spent when it comes to packaging design, when it comes to research, when it comes to branding. And so the industry around the consumer beverage category, it really does emphasize the importance of package design, and that drives decision making. So some key stats below, 85% of shoppers spend 30 minutes or less in a store. So you have a very, very narrow window to capture their attention, engage them, and hopefully have them pick up your product off the shelf. 81% of shoppers have tried something new just because of the product packaging. They think it's pretty. They think it looks great. They think it aligns with their values. And so they're willing to pick that up. They're willing to try it. And then a lot of times, as you can see, 63% of people will retry it because of the packaging. And so it's really a big, big deal. And 30% of the companies actually report a revenue increase after improving packaging. So there's many things, many levers you can pull when it comes to when you're redoing your packaging, price point, things like that, perception as well. So a lot to delve into there. Another reason it matters is really because of shrinking shelf space, right? We've all seen it. The craft beer section around here in New England seems to be getting smaller at most retailers. And really, it's just there's so many choices out there for consumers to consider. So the packaging is even more important. Some of the major competitive industry factors that we're seeing on the design agency side of things, which, so a lot of it will overlap with the Brewers Association, but the things that we're really looking at are format choices, right? Like, is it the 4-pack, which is very popular? Is it the up and coming 19 ounce can? A lot of times some breweries will have both of those, right? So they're actually taking 2 slots at retail, and that becomes more and more competitive. Analysis paralysis for the consumer. There's just so many choices. There's so much out there. How do they decide, within the 30 minutes that they're in the store, what they're actually going to purchase, right? A lot of times, maybe they've already made up their mind. As inflation concerns rise, you're seeing the macros sort of taking some of that share away as well. Just when it comes to the shelf set, you're seeing that grow because that's more where people are spending their money. That $20 4-pack maybe isn't something that most people can afford or necessarily willing to take a chance on. Obviously, the rise of non-alcoholic beer and other beverages, that's becoming something that's taking the shelf space as well. You have the seltzers, the ready-to-drink cocktails. A lot of this stuff most people have probably seen and heard about, ciders as well. But really, the last bullet point there is brand attrition due to slow pull-through. So that's a bigger concern for us from the design agency side of things, because essentially, if that package isn't selling, if you're not getting those rebuys, you could be losing your slot. And that has nothing necessarily to do with you. That has to do with how does the package perform on shelf from, really an objective standpoint. Also, it's an extremely powerful form of advertising, right? Packaging is often the consumer's first touch point with your brand. Whether it's in the store or maybe they see it on social media, maybe they've seen it on a commercial. Really, the package design is how the customer is going to relate to your brand, but then also sort of judge it and make their purchasing decisions, right? So from the consumer's perspective, really the package design reflects what's inside, right? Whether it's the quality, whether it's the attitudes, whether it's the values, all of those things, they are really judging this book by the cover. And so you need to make a really good first impression, right? The craft beer consumer specifically is much more savvy now. So they're expecting a higher level of finish, right? Like, unless your brand specifically is going in a direction where it's, a little more, value oriented, really they're going to expect a high level for the price point that they're paying. What they're essentially saying is, like, if you've invested in design, the same must be true for your product, right? Like, you basically are reflecting your level of quality with what's on the outside of the label. So repeatability in the design and that content, that's going to build trust with your consumer. That's going to say, hey, we're doing everything the right way, including this label. Some of the other things with advertising, obviously it's going to communicate, you're going to connect shared values, you're going to find a way to connect the dots with the consumer that way without possibly ever even using any words. And then brand recognition and affiliation. Sometimes, brands have certain weights through other things they're doing in the marketing realm, and people just like to have that product in their hand. Like, that says, this reflects who I am as a consumer. So again, that package, very, very important form of advertising. And so really, when it comes to bringing this all together, right, if you stand out, you can drive sales. So your packaging really needs to work harder to remain competitive. As we mentioned, it's more and more competitive out there with the shrinking shelf set, the wider choices of the beverage industry in general. And so at the end of the day, legally, you have to have a label. So let's make it deliver more than just sort of the same old, just sort of checking the boxes. Start to look at what is your return on investment on that when you're going through a process of either a rebrand or a totally new brand. So effective design really provides, the ability to convey quality, price, and value. The more eyes, the better. Just from a strict percentage standpoint of sales, awareness is the first step towards any purchase. And so really successful package design increases desire. It becomes the backbone of any marketing efforts possibly. So when you think of signage, when you think of posters, the package itself can be that kind of leading visual for you, especially a point of purchase. And then it's ever changing, right? There's no one solution. You're going to design it. Things are going to change. The market's going to change. Consumer preferences are going to change. And so you want to make sure that you're always on top of it. So Step two here is conducting market research, right? So understanding your market, right? Everybody has a different market. Everybody, this is great from all over the United States, all over the world, probably watching this. That your market is really how you're going to succeed. There's no magic bullet here in this presentation that's going to say here's how you solve it. But hopefully, this will give you some ways to look into and investigate a little bit more how you're approaching that. So when it comes to the broad category research just for craft beer, right? Like this industry has incredible resources. And so, whether you're using data or just your own observation, there's a lot out there, right? And so obviously being out there, getting into stores, studying the market leaders, looking at the data, what's selling, what's not, and why. The most you can delve into that, the better. Looking at packaging trend resources and research. So, looking at things like blogs, looking at thought leaders, LinkedIn's a great place for some of this stuff even to find. And it's really not to duplicate. That can be a trap. So just be careful. It's really just to better understand what's happening out there and maybe even finding a counterpoint to those trends, right? That helps you stand out. And so obviously leveraging the Brewers Association data, they do a tremendous job. I have a QR code there in case you haven't seen it before. You can scan to it and you can sort of start to see what's coming out when it comes to volume and sales, things like that. Just a tremendous asset there. So understand your market. And I've underscored your here because everybody's different, right? Every brewery's going to have different goals. You may want to sell 20,000 barrels. You may want to sell 3,000 barrels. It's completely up to whatever your goals are. So at the end of the day, it does fall on you or your agency to take the time, right? To really understand it. It's worth it. It will pay the dividends. Look locally, look regionally, see what's selling. Why not? What are the popular formats in your market, right? Like up here in New England, 4-packs, super popular, may not be the case elsewhere in the country. And so depending on that, there's great ways to really look at finding effective research ideas. So Google is great, right? Social media, pretty obvious one there, but really getting out into your local, beer, wine, grocery store, going to festivals, just observing. Don't, necessarily engage, just sort of understand what's happening. What are consumers looking at? What are they reacting to? Soliciting feedback in your tap room. That's powerful. If you have a tap room or a restaurant and you can find a way to, get more information from your customers, that is probably the most powerful thing you can do. Visiting other breweries, and then also, your distribution partners. They're your partners for a reason. They're not probably going to tell you everything, but trying to get from them, what are they seeing that's working on the market? What are the trends that are coming down the line that maybe you can get ahead of? Those are very important. So, pop quiz. I'm going to give you, since everybody's probably really busy, I'm going to take 2 minutes here and just list out on a piece of paper somewhere your top 5 competitors and how you differ from each. This is an exercise we take all our clients through, and I think this is something that's critical to understand, and sometimes people don't make time for it. So I'm going to grab a sip of water, and I'll let you guys take a minute to jot down your thoughts. It's amazing what 2 minutes feels like, huh? Okay, well, if you weren't able to complete that, please do take some time. It's really important, and you'll start to understand why we utilize that information as we go through the slides. So, also when it comes to market research, structuring your offerings, again, being out there in the marketplace, understanding what's working, what's selling, and really it's sort of that where production capabilities meet market demand. That's where you want to find that kind of perfect sweet spot. So you want to determine your formats, whether again 4-pack, 12-pack bottles, maybe bombers come back, who knows. And then really develop that lead SKU first. So when you're looking at either a new design or a rebrand, start with that first one, probably your core beer, your highest, what you think will be your leading SKU, and then develop 2 to 3 around that, and try and launch them all at the same time, right? So don't have it stand out there alone. Have it be, this is our new offering, and then you can sort of roll out the rest as time goes on. If you need to launch wide, you need to launch wide. That's great. And you want to come out with 10 brands. That's I am not going to argue with that. But really, if you give you some time just to stress test it, I would recommend that and allow it to evolve a little bit, still keeping that the brand framework. And then when it comes to those one-offs that you're doing, those special releases, absolutely, you can have fun with those, right? Like those will give you relevance, that will mix it up, keep it fresh for the consumer, but make sure that you're just adhering to some level of brand standard, whether it be format, whether it be font, color, something like that. And then there's been a lot of talk about sub-brands, Voodoo Ranger, etc. lately. My recommendation would be to avoid those unless you have a really strong support plan in place, which is totally possible. So if you have an absolute winner of an offering, and you want to turn it into a sub-brand, that's just a different conversation at the end of the day. And then also utilize shelf sets, right? Like this is all about getting out there in the world again, making sure that your design is effective when it comes to being on shelf against your competitors, right? So try and find that local bottle shop, that local beer store, the grocery store that has a lot of your competitors on there from your list. And then there's multiple ways to go around that, right? Like you can purchase those beers, bring them back, and then line them up in your office, and of course enjoy them as well. Bringing your design into the store and placing it on a shelf and taking a look at it and saying, okay, stand back. How does this look? How does this stand out across the market? And also you could do renders, right? So you could say, we want to just basically, again, Google's a great place to get different can images of your competitors and line them all up on a like a Photoshop file or something like that, and just take a look at how do we stack up that way. And then study stores in terms of, do they place them all by brand? Are they placing them by style? And then how does, like, if your brand has to stand alone because you have one IPA and one lager, how do they work like that? And then again, just A/B test different designs, different environments, take them around multiple stores. Don't just go to one and be like, okay, we've got our solution. Really utilize those shelf sets, say that 3 times fast, as a way to really look at how effective your design is. And again, this will change, but having something solid from the get-go with what you can control is the important thing. And at the end of the day, market research all comes back to staying true, right? Like if I thought I wanted to start a beer with the Rocky Mountains in it and call it Dave Light, and I've got this great font and I've done no research, I'm going to find myself in a lot of trouble. And so ensuring that our package design is unique to customers, is unique to you, really becomes that market advantage, right? There's so many breweries, there's so many products. It's just really critical to avoid the pitfalls that you may not even know you inadvertently copy another brand, or make choices that you look like a lot of other brands, and so you don't really stand out. And so doing the market research is really, really important for that reason alone. And so I've listed some common benefits to the left, in-store research, again, embracing your culture. A lot of times breweries are just, the culture in breweries is really the advantage most of them have in the market. So bringing that to the forefront, utilizing artists, unique naming, of course. But I also would look at, Untapped for searches. So if you're coming up with a name or a brand or a look and feel, kind of see what's out there. Untapped is a great resource for that. And of course, the trademark attorney is always something that is important if you're going to be, taking a brand to multiple markets and things like that. So I would highly recommend that if you've got some lead SKUs you're going to do. So a lot of the pitfalls too with market research is that copycat syndrome. You see something you like, it's cool, you want to look like that. That unfortunately, it's easy to be influenced by those brands, and so you might blend into the background, or you may even get yourself in a little bit of hot water there. So avoid using too much stock art, something that other people could purchase. Common layout practices. There's a lot of craft beer's got a great tradition, and a lot of times you use similar things that have been used before when it comes to layout, and you blend in the background again. Moving too quickly, I would say take your time when it comes to market research and spoofs, right? Like it's fun to spoof. It's fun to be aligned closely with other brands or kind of take a little knock at them or something like that, or have some fun with it. But I would recommend keeping those own premise. Those would be, that could be an issue in the larger retail market for sure. Okay, so let's get to the meat of it then. The effective package design, the 6 key elements. So what basically makes effective package design, right? And so I'm gonna choose one of our newest clients, one of our rebrand we did for Batson River up in southern Maine here. And so I'm gonna pick on them a little bit when it comes to basically those elements. And so really individual markets, taste, brand, right? Branding is a whole nother topic. That's going to drive what essentially the package design looks like. So what I'm hoping to get through today is here's what to consider objectively when you're looking at your package design, right? Like illustration styles, font choices, color choices. Those are a lot of those will be personal. They'll be coming out of the brand. They'll be coming out of the culture, things like that. But I want to have take the subjectivity out of it and give you the tools to be able to objectively say, is this packaging working for a consumer? And so really the 6 key elements, and there are more, but these are the ones I tend to focus on, is the logo, obviously, product name and features, the brand artwork itself, marketing support, legal, and print techniques. And so we'll dive into those 6. So the logo. Obviously, that's vital to your brand recognition, right? The consumer is often only generally familiar with a company, right? Like there's so many brands, there's so many choices out there. Having your logo be easily identifiable in a prominent location, consistently placed, like this allows the consumer to find your brand, right? Or to be introduced to your brand. They say, oh, okay, I'm seeing this over and over again. Maybe this is something I should consider. I would recommend that retail's really not time to get cute with your logo and do things that obscure it or hide it, because there's just so much on shelf these days. It's just it's not going to probably do you any good. And then obviously a lot of times this is their first impression, or they've had previous exposure to just the name. And so they've heard, oh, there's this great brewery, I want to check it out. We want them to be able to see that on shelf clearly. And then obviously, hopefully your logo does a really good job of, portraying the brand, portraying who you are. So that will also draw potential consumers in. The product name and features, right? So this not only lets the customer know what the product is, but it's also an opportunity, right, to evoke emotion, to drive some action, and to really develop and reinforce your brand. And so the product name, we want it to be legible from distance, something to consider when you're doing your shelf sets, right? Put it on and then take a few steps back. Understand that people are just walking by. And so if the name is hard to read, they may not even pick up on it. It's a good opportunity to clearly differentiate between brands if you have multiple brands on shelf. The power of color is physiological, right? So they're gonna in this case, they see orange sunset, they think maybe juicy, hazy type IPA, right? So utilizing some of those things when it comes to separating your brands, as well as the typography. Typography is a fantastic way, without people even reading, to get a personality across. And so really that's going to help to define that without even just visually. And so the way you support your brand trade is by the naming. Like the names you do give them are extremely important, as most people probably know. And the features provide a reason to buy, right? So why, like I know what the name is, but why would I buy this? What about this is special? And so, that can inform people while driving action as well. The brand artwork. So this is essentially, this is the heart of every design, is the visual, right? Like essentially the artwork can tell the story faster than any text. People are, people aren't reading as much these days. They expect instant gratification. And so the visual can really do that. Picture's worth 1,000 words. And so when it comes to considering how you're developing your brand artwork, I recommend really being original, right? Again, not spoofing, not copying other brands that are out there. Really have something that stands out for your brand. Consistency, right? In style, or not, right? Like maybe your artwork's completely different every time, and that's the brand. That's cool as long as all the other framework things are supporting that. Placement, generally you want that in the same area, just that way when you're on shelf, it creates a nice billboard effect. Take chances, right? Like you can have a lot of fun. This is a tremendous industry where people are expecting that originality. They're expecting, we're not trying to sell toilet paper, right? We can have a lot of fun with this. But make sure you don't overpower the other components, right? So still the logo needs to be prominent. You need to be able to understand the brand. But it can be contained in the area, which consider the PDP, which you can see here marked by the purple outline there. That's essentially where it will wrap around the can. And that's essentially what you're going to face. So the PDP, which is the primary display panel, is what people see. So keep that in mind when you're putting artwork. If you want people to be able to see a certain thing in a certain way, when you go full bleed, that can turn in there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But always consider that PDP and ensure printability, right? Like make sure that the artwork can actually be printed on a label or printed on a can when you're doing this stuff. Don't come up with something maybe so elaborate that it's at the end of the day, it's not reproducible. So brand artwork, super, super important. Marketing support. So the side label, it's a great area to support marketing efforts, right? Like you have a label, we just talked about the PDP. That's what most consumers are going to see. But you have, another 50% of the label left and right where you can have, some information that will support the larger company. And so at the end of the day, you want to express your brand. Not everybody's going to see this part of the label or maybe even care, but use this space. It will pay dividends over time if it's consistently there. And so, some examples of marketing support that you can do on the side label is, you can use it to describe the beer, which we've done in this case. You can use it just to support the larger brand. If there's, if there's some larger initiative that you're trying to get through with the brand, causes, things like that, this is a great place to support that. Social media info, drive people, again, use the label for more than just talking about the beer. Drive them to your social media, drive them to other touch points for the brand that will, hopefully make them bigger and bigger fans of your company. QR codes, everybody knows how to use them now. They're fantastic. They're great ways to A, lead people to more content, B, also track the efficiency of some of those things. How effective is that QR code? Is the side label working for us? Does one brand do better than the other? We get more scans. Another great thing is untapped check-ins with the QR code can bring them right to that untapped. So also it's a great place to hide Easter eggs. I'm a big fan, of just having little things in the brand that aren't necessarily core to the effectiveness of the packaging, but that kind of bring that really interested consumer in, and like when they discover that's a great moment for them. And then another thing that's out there, if you've seen 19 Crimes and some other wine companies are doing this, but augmented reality is a fantastic thing you can do on the side where it's an app you download and you scan it and you can bring the whole can to life. So there's some great things that can be done on the side labels, or that I highly recommend thinking about that, making that packaging work harder for you. Legal. So this is the dry, boring one, but of course, you want to avoid any costly, painful recalls, label delays, anything like that. So ensuring that your label is tight when it comes to the legal aspect of everything is important. And I would say during that development of that lead SKU, get all that sorted out. And so, I'm always going to default to the TTB. I've got a QR code there that you can scan that will bring you to their packaging page that will say, legally, this is everything that needs to be on a malt beverage label, or cider or ready to drink cocktail or whatever. But essentially, you're looking at the ABV, you want the style, which is generally ale or lager, the size, the legal warning, and then where it was, the company info. So where it was canned and produced. You want to make sure that's legible and on high contrast. Again, it's not a time to really get cute with this stuff. Like a lot of times you could get away with it, but I've seen brands get recalled where it's just not that high contrast isn't there. And so just ensuring that those things are done correctly. A little pro tip here is that turn your UPC codes 90 degrees. That way it wraps around the can in the correct direction. If you did it the other way, you could get some scanning issues with it being warped as it goes around the corner. Some of those thinner lines get a little fatter, and then you can have some scanning issues there. So, but again, I will always default to the TTB on that one. But just some advice on the legal stuff to try and make it move as smoothly as possible. And then printing techniques, right? There's just technology's come such a long way from digitally printed cans to what you can do on labels. There's just so much that can be done. So I would say work with your designer or printer to determine, really what kind of fun elements you can do to enhance the design while staying on budget. Things can get expensive quickly if you want. In this case with Batson River here, we actually print on a metal bop, but then we put white behind it. So the fire in this case, and when you see it in real life, you hold it in your hand. The fire is shimmery. It's very bright, and then in the background, all those very tall tales, all those local legends of Maine, those fade into the background. So that's just a black with nothing behind it. So there's a lot of layering that's happening there. And so, you can do a lot with just that basic kind of print technique, but you can get into foil stamping. There's some invisible inks out there, blacklight inks that are super cool. Obviously you can do full wraps, printed cans. There's a lot you're going to be able to do there. Although obviously there's some restrictions for sure. Die cutting, custom sizes, those are things to consider when you're doing your labeling. Neon colors, which they're a little bit more expensive, but they really stand out. And then spot finishes. So if you want some things to be shiny, some things to be glossy, you can do that. So again, a whole host of ideas here, but something really to consider when everybody's got a label, everybody's on shelf. How do you make yours stand out? This could be one way to do it, is just simply taking the time to consider what can you do from a printing technical standpoint. So the end result, right? So here's Batson River. Here are all four of those labels. Their core labels kind of lined up with each other. So you can see really essentially the effective design packages system, it should be stronger than the sum of its parts. You're going for this billboard effect. And so when you're evaluating your packaging, you really want to say, to answer the questions below to yourself, right? Is it quick communication? Like, can the consumer quickly understand what's happening here? Is everything consistent, the brand elements? Even though in this case, we've got a very strong structure here, and each one is very individual. They all kind of occupy the same area, even though they're expressing themselves differently. And so, like I said, you're trying to create this visual billboard, right? And so what that will do from a consumer standpoint is if they walk by, it gives them a place for their eye to rest. So they say, wow, okay, these all go together. That will draw their attention. And really that's what you're trying to go for from just a strict packaging design sense, no matter the industry, right? Like you want their eye to stop there and look at it. Build these steps will help you allow you to do that. You want to make sure that you have individual brand differentiation, even though they're all hanging together, as we say, from a design perspective. You want people to be able to differentiate them quickly. You want to maximize the flavor or the benefit appeal. Like, why would I choose this one over that one? Like, why is Acadian Skies different than Easternmost? And then really reinforcing the core brand values is something that again, brand's a whole nother topic, but making sure that when you see this on shelf, does this feel like your brand, right? Like just instinctively, is this who I want to be? Is this what I want to say? And so now that, you've done all that hard work, we've gone through all that, like your package design in the real world, right? Like, so now it looks great in your office, right? It looks great on shelf sets when you're the one placing it there. But I just wanted to give you a couple tips on what we see out there when it comes to the retail world and ways to, hopefully make your package work even harder for you there. So when it comes to merchandising, really, you want to be evaluating your beer packaging on how does it work in the marketplace. And it's critical just to ensure that it looks great on shelf, right? Like a brand that looks organized is just more appealing to a consumer than a brand that's messy, right? So on the right here, you see some of the work we did for Great Rhythm and just sort of that powerful impact of being, this was a very modern brand, very modern rebrand. It's bold in color. Basically, the color is supposed to taste like the beer. That was the goal. And so how do those things stand out on shelf and how do they separate? So really you want it to feel like it's a cohesive unit. And so you want to keep the labels facing outward, right? So PDP considerations that we talked about earlier, you hear facing, right? That's when everybody goes and turns the cans when they're in the store. Making sure that you're taking time to do that. It just represents the brand a lot better. So you've got this billboard effect, and you want to make sure that you've paid for it. You want it to work in execution. So I recommend working with your distribution teams, right? Like educate them, and most importantly, thank them, right? Like they're the ones that are out there in the marketplace that are going to be facing these brands when they're in the store to ensure that they look good. So even if you take 5-10 minutes with their sales team and say, hey, here's our expectation of what this label should look like. This is how we want it to be on shelf. Thank you for supporting us in that. Like that will go a long way towards keeping that. Also having your sales team just pay attention when they're out in the marketplace. I even do that. I don't work for a brewery anymore. And when I see one of my brands out there, I will face the shelf area just to make sure it looks good. So enlisting friends and families is a great way to do it. Gift card giveaways I've seen where, if you take a picture of the brand looking great on shelf, you're entered into a contest, right? Just sort of enlisting everybody to make sure that the brand looks the best it possibly can on shelf. And then providing marketing materials. So if you've got the budget and you've got the ability to do it, marketing materials that show the can as intended are huge. So if there's just a wild and crazy craft beer store and people move stuff all the time, but you have a nice poster there that shows the brand and how this should look, even though the labels are turned, that should be enough to at least bring home the power of the packaging and have it be effective for you. And then social media, right? Show off that packaging, like have it be a big part of what you're doing in social media, because at the end of the day, a lot of people might experience your brand first on social media. And so you want them to be able to identify it quickly once they're in store. You want that to resonate. We know that the attention span on social media is super quick. You've got this much time. And so really make a count, have a hefty percentage, I would recommend, of your feed be product focused, just so people get that repeated exposure to what your brand looks like. And just some quick tips. Social media, again, that is a very large conversation, but ways to make the packaging shine really is in social media is to use quality photography. The rule of thirds, depth of fields. There's a lot of tricks, not tricks, a lot of things you can be doing that will really make that stand out visually as people are scrolling by. Feature campaigns around your important brands, right? Like if you have a lead SKU, have multiple images of that show up in your feed, within a week. Video reels, obviously those get more engagement. So if you do video reels with product features, hopefully more and more people will see that. And it can be subtle, it can be fun, or it can be blatantly obvious, as long as you're getting that out in front of people. Having people engage, like putting the product in actual people's hands and showing that just takes a consumer to that next step. Like I want to be having that experience. And then seeking out unique settings and or backgrounds, something that's going to stand out, but that still kind of goes with your brand, which in this case here, we're showing Batson River, and it's that can, but it's on an LL Bean paddle, and it's a guy in the woods, and he's getting ready to go kayaking. And so it kind of brings you into that setting, but the can recognition is very strong. And then even using complementary colors, so the opposite color to help your packaging stand out in social media can work really well. But at the end of the day, when it comes to defining success for effective package design, the obvious measure, it's going to be increased sales. You want it to be effective. You want to get your ROI on that. But obviously, there are many ways to define what that success looks like. So I'd encourage you to consider some of the other metrics that I have listed below. And on, obviously the sales numbers before and after. If you do a slow rollout, as I mentioned earlier, like comparing, are the new cans doing much better than the old cans? And it's just the package design, that could be a success. Soliciting customer feedback on the design. This can be a tricky one in the social media world, but this is something great to do in your tap room, something great to do with family and friends. QR code scans. Again, if you have a QR code on your label, is that getting scans? There's software you can get, QR Monkey, things like that, where it can tell you how many scans you're getting. Is that working? You can even get more robust into the marketing world and do things like website landing pages around each brand, hashtag or social media campaigns. How much pull through is that stuff getting? Gauging that social media just response when you launch a new design. Are people loving it? Are people hating it? Are people engaged? Are they just excited about it? And then again, increased untapped/reviews. Are you seeing an uptick in these things because possibly, people are more engaged with the brand itself because the packaging is driving that. Um, so I'd ask you to consider those, but I understand, yes, sales. And so that's all I had. So I did allow a few minutes here. If there are any question and answers, questions, please feel free to drop some in the comments. Happy to answer anything you have. Okay. Well, it doesn't seem like we have any questions, so hopefully I answered absolutely everything you had about packaging. But thank you very much again. My name is Dave Smith from Green Duck Studio. Please recycle. I like to close with that all the time, just because we do create packaging, and aluminum cans and tap handles and things like that are a great thing to recycle. So thank you so much for all your time, and have a great day.